Commander Vextal stared at the display screen in front of him. The green lights on the scanner showed something that should not exist. His four eyes blinked slowly as he tried to understand what he was seeing. "Are you sure these readings are correct?" he asked his science officer. Zaran checked her instruments again. Her thin fingers moved quickly over the controls. "Yes, Commander. The energy signatures are definitely there. Something big is happening in the Kepler system." Vextal's ship, the Star Wind, was on a routine patrol mission along the outer edge of known space. This area was supposed to be empty. Nothing lived here except rocks and gas clouds. The Galactic Confederation had marked these systems as dead zones after the Earth disaster 40 years ago. "Take us closer," Vextal ordered, "but keep us hidden." The Starwind moved through space like a ghost. Its stealth systems made it invisible to most scanners. As they got closer to the Kepler system, the readings became stronger. Much stronger. "Commander," Zaran said, her voice shaking a little, "I'm seeing massive energy outputs. Industrial level. Someone has built something very big here." "Humans?" Vextal wondered out loud. But that was impossible. Earth was gone. The humans were extinct. Everyone knew this story. 40 years ago, Earth had been destroyed by what scientists called a cosmic event. The planet simply disappeared in a flash of strange light. No one knew exactly what happened, but all the humans died with their world. The galaxy mourned for a week, then divided up the empty human colonies among other species. Now the scanners showed something that made no sense. "Sir," called out Navigator Crix from his station, "I'm detecting multiple planets with artificial structures. Huge ones. This isn't a few small outposts. This looks like a major civilization." Vextal felt his stomach twist. If humans had survived, it would change everything. The peace treaties, the territory divisions, the trade agreements, all of it was based on humans being gone forever. "Show me," he said. The main screen lit up with images from their long-range sensors. What Vextal saw made him grab his chair for support. The third planet in the system was covered with cities. Massive space stations orbited above it. Ships moved between the stations like busy insects, but these were not normal civilian ships. Even from this distance, Vextal could see they were military vessels. Warships, lots of them. "How many ships do you count?" he asked. Crix's voice was barely a whisper. "Over 3,000, sir, and that's just what we can see from here." Vextal's mind raced. 3,000 warships was more than most star systems had for defense. This was a fleet that could conquer entire sectors of space. Are they human ships?" he asked. "The design is unlike anything in our databases," Zaran reported. "But the energy signatures match old Earth technology patterns. Advanced versions, but definitely based on human science." The commander felt fear creep up his spine. If humans had not only survived but built this kind of military force, what did they want? Why were they building so many warships? "Sir," Crix said suddenly, "I'm detecting something else. Shipyards. Massive construction facilities in orbit around the planet. They're building more ships. Lots more." On the screen, Vextal could see huge skeletal frameworks where new warships were taking shape. The construction was happening fast, much faster than any known shipyard could work. How is this possible? Zaran wondered. Human technology was advanced, but not this advanced. These ships look centuries ahead of anything Earth ever produced. Vextal studied the images more carefully. The human ships had strange curves and angles that hurt his eyes to look at. They seemed to bend light around them in ways that defied physics. Some of the larger vessels appeared to be as big as small moons. "Commander," Crix said, pointing at another screen. "Look at the planet itself." The images showed continents covered with geometric patterns. Cities, but not normal cities. These looked like fortresses. Every settlement was surrounded by walls and weapon installations. Even the farmlands had defensive structures scattered throughout them. "They've turned their entire world into a military base," Vextal said quietly. This was not normal behavior for any species. Civilizations built cities for trade, for culture, for comfortable living. They did not turn every piece of land into A fortress unless they expected to be attacked. Who are they preparing to fight? Zaran asked. That was the question that scared Vextal the most. The human fleet was bigger than anything the Galactic Confederation could put together. If humans wanted to reconquer their old territories, no one could stop them. If they wanted revenge for being forgotten and replaced, they had the power to take it. Sir, Crix interrupted his thoughts. I'm detecting patrol ships heading our way. Vextal's blood ran cold. How did they find us? Unknown, sir. Our stealth systems are working perfectly, but 3 human vessels are definitely moving toward our position. On the scanner, 3 dots were approaching fast. Too fast. Human ships had never been able to move at those speeds. Evasive action, Vextal ordered. Get us out of here. But as the Starwind tried to retreat, the 3 human ships somehow appeared directly in their path. Not flew there. Appeared there, as if they had teleported through space. Impossible, Zaran breathed. The human ships were sleek and deadly looking. They moved through space like living creatures, smooth and graceful. Red lights pulsed along their hulls in patterns that seemed almost like heartbeats. They're scanning us, Crix reported. I can't block it. Their scanners are going right through our shields. A new voice filled the bridge. It came from the human ships, speaking in perfect galactic standard. Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. State your identity and purpose. The voice was calm and professional, but there was something underneath it that made Vextal's skin crawl. It was the voice of someone who was used to being obeyed without question. Vextal hesitated. Standard diplomatic protocol said he should identify himself and request peaceful passage. But these were humans who were supposed to be extinct, building a war fleet in secret space. Normal protocols might not apply. This is Commander Vextal of the Galactic Confederation vessel Starwind, he said finally. We were conducting a routine patrol when we detected your presence. There was a long pause. Then the human voice spoke again. Commander Vextal, you and your crew will accompany us to Station Alpha. Any attempt to flee or send transmissions will result in your destruction. It was not a request. It was an order. Vextal looked around his bridge at his frightened crew. The human ships surrounded them completely now. Each one was twice the size of the Starwind and covered with weapons that he did not recognize. We will comply, he said. As the human ships escorted them toward the planet, Vextal wondered if he had just discovered the galaxy's salvation or its doom. The humans were alive. They were advanced beyond anything he had imagined, and they were preparing for war on a massive scale. The question was, war against whom? Station Alpha was huge beyond anything Vextal had ever seen. The space station stretched for miles in every direction, its metal surfaces gleaming under the light of the system's star. Thousands of ships moved around it like fish swimming near a reef. The human escorts guided the Starwind to a docking bay that could have held 50 ships their size. As they landed, Vextal saw human workers moving around with purpose and efficiency. They wore simple uniforms, but every one of them carried weapons. Remember, Vextal told his crew, we are diplomats now. Stay calm and observe everything. A group of humans waited for them at the airlock. They were tall and strong-looking, with serious faces and alert eyes. Their leader was a woman with short gray hair and scars on her hands. She wore a uniform with symbols that Vextal did not recognize. Commander Vextal, she said in Galactic Standard, I am Governor Sarah Chen. Welcome to New Terra Colony. Vextal bowed in the traditional greeting. Governor Chen, I must say we are surprised to find humans alive and thriving here. The galaxy believed your species was extinct. Sarah Chen's expression did not change. The galaxy was meant to believe that. Please follow me. There are things you need to understand. She led them through corridors filled with busy humans. Everyone they passed nodded respectfully to the governor, but Vextal noticed they also kept their hands near their weapons. These people were polite, but ready for trouble at any moment. The walls were covered with screens showing images from around the colony. Vextal saw more ships being built, soldiers training and massive weapons being tested. Everything looked military and urgent. Governor, Vextal said as they walked. May I ask why your people have been hiding, and why you are building such a large military force? Sarah stopped walking and turned to face him. Her eyes were hard and determined. Because we learned something when Earth died, she said. We learned that the universe is not a safe place. We learned that sometimes entire species must fight or die. She led them into a large room with windows that looked out into space. The view showed hundreds of warships moving in formation, practicing combat maneuvers. When Earth was destroyed, most of our people died, Sarah continued. But some of us survived. We were on colonies, on ships, on research stations. We came together here in this hidden system, and we made a promise. What promise? Vextal asked. That humanity would never be helpless again, that we would be ready for anything that tried to destroy us. She touched a control panel, and the room's walls became giant screens. Images filled the walls. Images that made Vextal's stomach turn cold. The first image showed Earth as it used to be, blue and green and beautiful. Then came the moment of destruction. But this was not the simple cosmic disaster that everyone had been told about. Vextal watched as something came out of empty space near Earth. It was dark and twisted, like a living shadow. It wrapped around the planet and began to dissolve it. Breaking it apart piece by piece, the destruction took hours, not seconds. What is that thing? Zaran whispered. We call them devourers, Sarah said. They come from somewhere else. Another dimension, another reality. They eat entire worlds, consuming all matter and energy to fuel their journey between dimensions. More images appeared on the screens. Other planets, other star systems, all being consumed by the dark entities. Whole civilizations disappeared in waves of shadow and destruction. The attack on Earth was not random, Sarah explained. It was a test. The Devourers were studying us, learning about our galaxy, preparing for a larger invasion. Vextal stared at the images in horror. How do you know all this? Because we found pieces of them in Earth's wreckage. Our scientists studied the remains for 40 years. We learned their patterns, their weaknesses, their plans. Sarah touched another control and new images appeared. These showed human scientists working with strange, twisted metal. The metal seemed to bend and flow like liquid, but it also pulsed with its own light. Devourer technology is unlike anything in our dimension, Sarah said. But we learned to understand it. We learned to copy it. And we learned to fight it. She showed them more images. Human weapons that fired beams of pure energy. Ships that could fold space around themselves. Soldiers wearing armor that seemed to be made of living metal. For 40 years we have been preparing, Sarah said. Every human colony became a fortress. Every human became a soldier. We developed new technologies, new strategies, new ways of thinking about war. But why? Vextal asked. If Earth was just a test, why are you so certain they will return? Sarah's face became even more serious. Because they're already on their way. The screens changed again. This time they showed star charts of the galaxy's edge. Red dots marked locations where something strange was happening. Long-range sensors have detected reality distortions, Sarah explained. Space itself is being twisted and bent. The same patterns we saw before Earth's destruction, but on a much larger scale. How long do we have? Vextal asked, though he was afraid of the answer. 2 years. Maybe less. The room fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Vextal looked at the images of the approaching threat and felt despair wash over him. How could anyone fight creatures that could destroy entire planets? The Galactic Confederation has to be warned, he said. Yes, Sarah agreed. They do. But warning them is not enough. The Confederation's military forces are designed for keeping peace between civilized species. They are not prepared for a war against entities that want to consume all life in the galaxy. Then what do you propose? Sarah walked to another control panel. The screens now showed the massive human fleet in all its glory. Thousands of advanced warships ready for battle. Humanity offers its protection to all species in the galaxy, she said. But protection requires cooperation. Every world must Become a fortress. Every citizen must become a soldier. The peaceful times are over. Vextal understood what she was really saying. The humans were not just offering help. They were offering to take control of the galaxy's defense, and that meant accepting human leadership, human methods, human ways of thinking about war. The Confederation Council will never agree to that, he said. Then they will die, Sarah replied simply. And so will everyone else. She turned to face him directly. Commander Vextal, you have a choice to make. You can return to the Confederation and tell them about the threat. You can help convince them to work with us. Or you can watch as your peaceful galaxy burns. Vextal looked out at the human fleet again. These ships represented power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. But they also represented a complete change in how civilized species related to each other. What guarantee do we have that humanity will not use this power to conquer rather than protect? He asked. Sarah smiled for the first time since they had met. It was not a happy smile. You have the guarantee that we need you alive to fight the Devourers, she said. Dead species cannot help us win this war. As Vextal considered his options, he realized that the galaxy's future now rested on a terrible choice. Accept humanity's protection and lose their peaceful way of life, or reject it and face extinction. The humans had evolved into something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that chose war over death and victory over peace. The question was whether the rest of the galaxy could evolve the same way in time. Sarah Chen led Vextal and his crew deeper into Station Alpha. They passed through security doors that required multiple scans before opening. Guards at each checkpoint wore armor that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. Their weapons hummed with energy that made the air itself feel heavy. Where are you taking us? Vextal asked. To see the truth, Sarah replied. All of it. They entered an elevator that dropped down for what felt like hours. When the doors finally opened, they were deep underground in what looked like a massive research facility. Scientists and technicians moved between workstations filled with equipment that Vextal had never seen before. This is Archive 7, Sarah explained. Our most secure research facility. Everything we know about the Devourers is stored here. She led them to a room where the walls were covered with screens and displays. In the center sat a table made of the same twisted metal that Vextal had seen in the earlier images. The metal pulsed with dark light and seemed to whisper in languages that hurt to hear. This is a piece of a devourer, Sarah said, pointing at the table. We recovered it from Earth's debris field. It took our scientists 20 years to learn how to study it safely. Dr. Marcus Webb, the facility's chief scientist, joined them. He was an old man with tired eyes and hands that shook slightly. Every time we examine it, we learn something new and terrible, he said. Show them, Sarah ordered. Dr. Webb activated a projection system. The room filled with images that made Vextal's mind reel. He saw the space between dimensions, a twisted void filled with hungry shadows. The Devourers lived there, feeding on the energy that leaked between realities. They are not alive in any way we understand, Dr. Webb explained. They are more like forces of nature, entropy given form and purpose. They exist to consume and grow stronger. The images showed how the Devourers worked. They would send scouts through tiny rifts in space-time to study a galaxy. They would test its defenses by destroying a few worlds, learning how the species there fought back. Then they would open massive gateways and pour through in numbers beyond counting. Earth was not their first target, Dr. Webb said. We found evidence in the debris that they have consumed hundreds of galaxies before ours. New images appeared, the remains of dead galaxies where every star had been extinguished. Empty space stretching for billions of light years with nothing but cold darkness. How many of them are there? Zaran asked in a small voice. Trillions, Dr. Webb replied. Maybe more. They reproduce by consuming matter and energy. Every world they eat makes them stronger and creates more of them. Vextal felt his hope dying. How can anyone fight against such numbers? Sarah stepped forward. By being smarter, by being ruthless, by accepting that this is a war where mercy equals extinction. She activated another display. This one showed human weapons and tactics designed specifically to fight the Devourers. Vextal saw soldiers wearing armor made from processed Devourer metal, weapons that could tear holes in reality itself, and ships that could exist in multiple dimensions at once. We learned to use their own technology against them, Sarah explained. But it came at a cost. Working with Devourer materials changes you. Our soldiers are no longer entirely human. Our ships operate on principles that violate natural law. We became something new to survive. Dr. Webb showed them recordings of human soldiers in combat training. They moved too fast, reacted too quickly, and showed no fear even when facing simulations of Devourer attacks. Their eyes had a strange glow, and their voices carried harmonics that made Vextal's ears hurt. The armor bonds with the wearer, Dr. Webb explained. It enhances their abilities but also changes their brain chemistry. They become perfect warriors, but they lose much of what made them human. Was it worth it? Vextal asked. Ask me that question after we win, Sarah replied. She led them to another section of the archive where massive screens showed the approaching threat. The images came from deep space sensors scattered throughout the galaxy's edge. Red warning. Lights flashed as reality distortions grew stronger. The main invasion force is still 2 years away, Sarah said, but advanced scouts are already here. She showed them recordings from the outer systems. Ships disappeared without warning. Planets went silent. Some worlds showed signs of the same reality-warping energy that had destroyed Earth. Why hasn't anyone noticed? Vextal asked. Because the Confederation only watches civilized space, Sarah replied. The frontier worlds, the mining colonies, the research outposts, they're considered expendable. No one pays attention when they go quiet. The screens showed a map of the galaxy with red dots marking lost systems. There were dozens of them all along the outer rim. The pattern is the same as before Earth, Dr. Webb said. They're studying us, learning our weaknesses, preparing their main assault. Sarah pulled up tactical projections. When they attack, they will hit every inhabited system simultaneously. The Confederation's response will be too slow and too scattered. Individual worlds will fall in hours. Then what do you propose? Vextal asked, though he feared the answer. Total mobilization, Sarah said. Every species, every world, every citizen becomes part of the defense. No exceptions. The screens showed her vision of the galaxy's future. Every planet surrounded by orbital defense platforms. Every city turned into a fortress. Every civilian trained as a soldier. The Galactic Confederation is built on the idea that different species can cooperate while maintaining their independence. Sarah continued. That system works for peaceful times. It will not work against the Devourers. You're talking about military dictatorship, Vextal said. I'm talking about survival, Sarah replied. Species that refuse to adapt will become extinct. Species that accept our leadership will live to see the war's end. She showed them more projections, battle scenarios where unified command structures defeated Devourer forces, and scenarios where independent systems were destroyed one by one. The mathematics are simple, Dr. Webb added. Coordinated defense succeeds. Independent defense fails. There is no middle ground. Vextal looked at his crew. Zaran was staring at the images with horror. Crix was taking notes, already thinking. Like a soldier. They represented the choice facing every individual in the galaxy. What about species that are naturally peaceful? Vextal asked. Some of our member races have never fought wars. Then they will learn, Sarah said. Or they will die. The Devourers do not care about anyone's philosophy or culture. They only care about consuming everything in their path. She brought up one final image, a recording from Earth's final moments. Vextal watched as human civilians, including children, fought desperately against the Devourer scouts. They had no military training, no advanced weapons, but they fought anyway, because the alternative was extinction. This is what courage looks like, Sarah said quietly. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to fight despite fear. Every species in the galaxy will need to find this courage within themselves. As they prepared to leave the archive, Dr. Four, Webb handed Vextal a small device. "This contains all our research data on the Devourers," he said. "Show it to your government. Let them see what's coming." "Will they believe it?" Sarah asked. Vextal looked at the device in his hand. It contained proof that would change everything. The end of peace, the beginning of the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I have to try." Sarah nodded. "The offer stands, Commander. Humanity will defend this galaxy, but we cannot do it alone, and we will not waste time trying to convince species that prefer extinction to adaptation." As they left the archive, Vextal understood that he was carrying more than just information. He was carrying the future of galactic civilization, a future that would either be saved by embracing humanity's warrior path or lost to the creatures that devoured worlds. The Galactic Confederation Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 200 species argued loudly as Vextal's report echoed through the massive hall. The holographic images of destroyed worlds and approaching devourers floated above their heads like nightmares made real. Council Speaker Mordoon slammed her staff against the floor repeatedly, trying to restore order. Her blue skin had turned pale with stress, and her normally calm voice cracked as she spoke. "Representatives, please. We must discuss this matter rationally." But rationality seemed impossible. The hegemony delegates accused humanity of fabricating the threat to justify conquest. The Trade Federation worried about economic disruption. The Science Consortium demanded more proof before making any decisions. Vextal stood at the center of it all, holding the data device Dr. Webb had given him. He had already shown them everything: the Devourer artifacts, the consumed galaxies, the reality distortions at the galaxy's edge. But fear made people reject truth more than accept it. "The evidence is clear," he said, raising his voice above the noise. "The threat is real, and it is approaching. Humanity offers us a chance to survive." Ambassador Kalen of the Hegemony stood up, his forearms gesturing dramatically. "Convenient that the supposedly extinct humans return just as this threat appears. How do we know they did not cause these disturbances themselves?" "Because I have seen their wounds," Vextal replied. "I have watched their children train for war because they know death is the alternative. No species would transform itself so, completely for a lie." The argument might have continued forever, but Speaker Morden activated the emergency broadcast system. Every screen in the chamber showed the same image: a live feed from the frontier world of Kepler-7. The planet was dying. Reality itself was being torn apart as dark shapes poured through rifts in space. Cities disappeared in waves of shadow. Ships that tried to escape simply vanished the moment the darkness touched them. The chamber fell silent as they watched an entire world die in real time. "This transmission was received 20 minutes ago," Speaker Morden announced. "Kepler-7 is 300 light-years from the nearest human colony. Humanity could not have caused this." The silence stretched for long minutes. Then Ambassador Kalen spoke in a much quieter voice. "What exactly are the humans proposing?" Before Vextal could answer, the chamber's security system activated. Guards rushed in as new ships appeared on the station's sensors. But these were not attacking vessels. They were human diplomatic craft requesting permission to dock. "Let them come," Speaker Morden decided. "We need to hear their offer directly." An hour later, Governor Sarah Chen entered the council chamber, accompanied by General Marcus Torres, the military commander Vextal had heard about but never met. Torres was a tall man with scars covering his face and arms. His eyes held the same strange glow that Vextal had seen in the enhanced human soldiers. "Representatives of the Galactic Confederation," Sarah began, "we come to offer our assistance in defending your worlds." "At what price?" demanded Ambassador Yeltar of the mining guilds. "Complete military cooperation," General Torres replied. His voice carried harmonics that made everyone in the chamber feel uneasy. "Every world must accept human defensive technologies and training. Every able-bodied citizen must undergo combat preparation. Every planetary government must follow unified military command." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Delegates shouted about independence, sovereignty, and cultural preservation. Some accused humanity of using the crisis to establish an empire. Sarah waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. We understand your concerns, but let me show you what happens when species try to fight the devourers using traditional, military methods. She activated a holographic projector that filled the chamber with images from the archives. The delegates watched in horror as advanced civilizations fell in hours, despite having powerful military forces. Their ships, weapons, and strategies were useless against enemies that could bend reality itself. Conventional warfare fails because the devourers do not follow the rules of physics that govern normal matter, Sarah explained. Only weapons and tactics based on their own technology can harm them. General Torres stepped forward. We have spent 40 years developing these weapons and tactics. We are willing to share them freely, but they require complete commitment from every participant. Define complete commitment, Speaker Mordoon requested. Planetary defense networks controlled by human-designed AI systems, Torres replied. Military, forces equipped with human weapons and armor. Civilian populations relocated to fortress cities. Industrial production focused entirely on war materials. You're asking us to abandon our way of life, Ambassador Kalin protested. We're asking you to stay alive, Sarah replied simply. She showed them more images, human colonies that had survived devourer scout attacks. Every building was armored. Every street could become a firing line. Children played war games in playgrounds designed as defensive positions. This is what survival looks like, Sarah said. It is not pretty and it is not comfortable. But our people are alive while entire species have been consumed. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates wanted to accept humanity's offer immediately. Others demanded guarantees about post-war independence. A few still insisted the threat was not real despite the evidence. Finally, Speaker Morden called for a preliminary vote. It was not about full acceptance of the human plan, but about whether to begin defensive preparations while negotiations continued. The vote was close. 103 in favor, 97 opposed. The motion passes, Speaker Morden announced. We will begin implementing emergency defense measures while continuing discussions about long-term cooperation, but General Torres shook his head. With respect, Speaker, there is no time for gradual implementation. The main invasion force will arrive in less than 18 months. Every day of delay costs lives. What do you suggest? She asked. A demonstration, Torres replied. Let us show you how human methods work against a real devourer attack. Then you can decide if you want our protection or prefer to face extinction alone. The proposal was controversial, but the Council agreed. They would send observers to watch human forces respond to the next devourer incursion. Based on what they saw, the galaxy would choose its path forward. As the session ended, Vextal approached Sarah and General Torres. Do you really believe the galaxy can be unified for this war? Belief is irrelevant, Torres replied. Unity is necessary for survival. Species that cannot adapt will become extinct. Natural selection applies to civilizations just as much as individuals. Sarah's expression was more gentle but equally determined. We have seen what happens when good people refuse to fight monsters. Commander, Earth died because we believed in peace more than we prepared for war. The galaxy will not make the same mistake. Walking back to his ship, Vextal wondered if they were witnessing humanity's salvation of the galaxy or its conquest. Perhaps, he thought grimly, there was no difference anymore. The peaceful age was ending. The age of war had begun. And humanity, transformed by loss and hardened by necessity, would lead them all into the darkness ahead. Whether they emerged from that darkness still recognizable as the species they once were remained to be seen. But at least they would emerge alive, which was more than could be said for the countless civilizations that had already fallen to the hunger of the devourers. The demonstration came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after the council vote, long-range sensors detected a massive reality distortion forming near the industrial world of Nexus Prime. The planet held 12 billion inhabitants from 40 different species, exactly the kind of target the Devourers preferred. Vextal stood on the bridge of the human command ship Defiance, watching as the combined fleet took positions around Nexus Prime. The sight was overwhelming. 3,000 human warships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the same twisted metal he had seen in the archives. Around them flew ships from dozens of other species, those governments that had agreed to immediate cooperation with humanity's defense plan. "Contact in 20 minutes, reported the tactical officer, a human woman whose eyes glowed with the same enhancement that Vextal had seen in General Torres. "Reality distortion is reaching critical levels. Governor." Sarah Chen stood beside Vextal, her face calm despite the approaching battle. "Commander, I want you to record everything. Your people need to see what we're fighting and how we fight it." Through the observation windows, Vextal watched space itself begin to tear. Dark lines appeared between the stars, spreading like cracks in glass. Behind those cracks something moved, shapes that hurt to look at directly. "First scouts emerging," the tactical officer announced. The Devourer scouts came through the rifts like nightmares becoming real. They were not ships in any normal sense, but living shadows that moved through space as if swimming through water. Their forms shifted constantly, never quite the same from one moment to the next. "All ships, engage," General Torres commanded, from the fleet's tactical center. What happened next was unlike any battle Vextal had ever witnessed. The human ships fired weapons that seemed to tear holes in reality itself. Beams of twisted light reached across space and struck the Devourers, causing them to writhe and scream in frequencies that made the bridge crew cover their ears. But for every scout destroyed, 2 more emerged from the rifts. The cracks in space grew wider, and larger shapes began to push through. "Major forms incoming," the tactical officer reported. "Class 4 entities detected." The larger Devourers were the size of space stations, their bodies flowing like liquid darkness. They reached toward Nexus Prime with appendages that could wrap around continents. This was when the true power of humanity's transformation became clear. "Phase 2 engagement," General Torres ordered. The human ships began to change. Their hulls flowed like the Devourer metal they were made from, reconfiguring into new shapes optimized for dimensional warfare. Weapons emerged from surfaces that had seemed solid moments before. More importantly, the human crews began to change as well. Vextal watched in fascination and horror as the tactical officer's enhancement kicked into full combat mode. Her movements became inhumanly fast and precise. Her eyes now glowed brightly enough to cast shadows, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the ship's computers respond faster. "Sir," she reported, "synchronized firing pattern Alpha 7, ready for implementation." "Execute," Torres replied. Every human ship in the fleet fired simultaneously. But these were not individual weapons. They were components of a single massive gun that used the entire fleet as its barrel. The combined beam struck the largest Devourer entity directly in what might have been its center. The creature screamed, and this time the sound was audible across all dimensions. Space around it began to collapse inward, as the entity was torn apart at the molecular level. "Impossible," whispered the Zephyrian observer next to Vextal. "How are they doing this? They became like their enemy to defeat their enemy," Vextal replied. The battle continued for 6 hours. More Devourers poured through the rifts, but the human fleet was ready for them. Ships that were destroyed reformed themselves from scattered particles. Weapons that ran out of ammunition somehow continued firing. Crew members who should have been exhausted fought with increasing intensity. Most disturbing of all, Vextal noticed that some of the human ships were now communicating with each other in the same harmonic frequencies that the Devourers used. They had not just learned to fight their enemy, they had learned to think like them. "Final phase," General Torres announced. "Rift collapse protocol initiated." Vextal watched as human ships positioned themselves around each dimensional rift. Working together, they generated a field of twisted energy that began to seal the tears in space itself. The Devourers trapped in normal space fought desperately to escape back to their dimension, but the human weapons prevented their retreat. One by one, the remaining entities were destroyed or captured. When the last rift closed, the fleet hung silent in space around Nexus Prime. The planet was safe, its billions of inhabitants unaware of how close they had come to extinction. Battle. Report, Torres requested. 17 ships damaged, 3 destroyed, the tactical officer reported. Estimated Devourer casualties, 47 scout entities, 12 major forms, 0 breakthrough to planetary surface. General Torres turned to Vextal. Commander, you have recorded everything? Yes, Vextal replied, though his voice was shaking. But I must ask, what have you become? Sarah Chen answered for the general. We became what we needed to become to survive. The question now is whether the rest of the galaxy is willing to make the same transformation. The answer came faster than anyone expected. Within hours of Vextal's battle recordings reaching the Confederation Council, governments throughout the galaxy began requesting immediate defensive assistance from humanity. The transformation began everywhere at once. Peaceful trade worlds became fortress planets almost overnight. Civilian populations learned to use weapons and fight in coordinated units. Industrial facilities retooled to produce the strange technologies that could harm devourers. Not every species adapted easily. The deeply peaceful meditation worlds refused all military training until devourer scouts consumed their 3 largest colonies in a single day. The Independent Systems Alliance tried to create their own version of human weapons but failed catastrophically when their copies exploded during testing. But those who accepted humanity's guidance survived. More than survived, they grew stronger. Vextal found himself appointed as a liaison officer, helping coordinate between human command and Confederation forces. He watched species he had known all his life transform into something harder, more focused, more dangerous. The Zephyrians discovered that their natural telepathic abilities could be enhanced to coordinate entire fleets in battle. The mining guild species found that their industrial knowledge made them excellent at building the massive defensive structures humanity required. Even the gentle herbivore collectives learned to fight with a determination that surprised their former predators. 18 months later, when the main Devourer invasion force arrived, they found a galaxy that no longer resembled the peaceful confederation they had scouted years before. The battle for the galaxy lasted 3 years and cost billions of lives. Entire solar systems were consumed before they could be defended. Some species went extinct despite humanity's protection. The cost of victory was measured in the fundamental transformation of every surviving civilization, but they won. When the last Devourer was destroyed and the final dimensional rift was sealed, the galaxy found itself under the protection of forces that their grandparents would not have recognized as civilized beings. Standing on the bridge of Station Alpha, now the military capital of the galaxy, Vextal looked out at the victory celebration. Human and alien ships flew together in formation, their crews enhanced with the same technologies that had once seemed so alien and frightening. Do you regret it? Sarah Chen asked, joining him at the observation window. Vextal considered the question carefully. His own people now carried weapons as naturally as they once carried trade goods. His daughter was training to become an enhanced soldier. His homeworld was surrounded by orbital defense platforms that could destroy entire fleets. No, he said finally. We are alive. Our children will be alive. That is worth any price. Sarah nodded. The age of peace is over, Commander. But the age of survival has begun. And sometimes survival is the greatest victory of all. Looking out at the transformed galaxy, Vextal realized that humanity had not just saved them from the Devourers. They had taught every species the most important lesson in the universe, that the will to survive no matter what the cost was the foundation of all civilization. The galaxy would never be the same, but it would continue to exist, protected by those who had chosen adaptation over extinction, victory over peace, and life over the easy death of remaining unchanged in a universe that demanded evolution.